So maybe just a quick summary. Atlas, we did a early seed raise at the start of this year. We closed just under 9 million. That was funded by Sequoia, Dragonfly Capital, Makers Fund, YDG. So very fortunate to have a very nice cap table of both a Web2 VC, Web3 VC, and also a gaming fund. We were voted number one on PlayToEarn.net, voted best GameFi project by Polygon. Polygon is a layer 2 protocol for those who are unfamiliar. Yeah, and in total, the stats are a bit backdated, but we have over 1.5 million users. Total gameplay have chalked up over more than 15 million. And yes, we did a NFT mint early in the year, in March, and we managed to sell all of our NFTs. And maybe just to share a little background of the team. Myself, I lead product and partnership. A lot of the rest of our team all did our rounds in TradFi, traditional finance, art, or in Web2 tech companies. We're fortunate enough to have a really strong, solid bench of advisors that we can always go back and get advice from, or get some inkling about how the market sentiments are. And it's not only just a pure presentation. So if anytime you want to interrupt or you have questions, feel free to jump in or give a message in chat, just so that I don't feel like I'm talking to myself. Okay, a little bit about the ecosystem. Maybe just to give a little bit of context about what we do at Atlas. So we are a gamification platform to bridge Web2 users into Web3. And we do that through 4 verticals. The first is through casual games. This is kind of the first product that we've built, Atlas.com. So we cobbled together 20, 30 different casual games, hooked up with a crypto rewards platform. And we added meta mechanics like marketplace, forging, a few social elements as well. And since then, we've branched out into 3 other verticals. The next is through multiplayer games. This is something you can check it out at battleshowdown.com. In fact, one of our lead game designers on the call as well. This is the team's work of art. So think about Smash Bros. Brawlhalla, but Web3 version. So it's kind of like a web Smash Bros. Gameplay, but imagine if every character were interoperable NFTs, and it's not just determined by the publisher or the studio, and anybody with an NFT could integrate and get their games, get their assets within the game. The third vertical is what we do in terms of gamifying complex finance products. So Pok is the sound that a chicken makes. And what we do is we visualize something as complicated as buying an option, and visualize it in a way as to you minting an NFT egg, hatching the egg, feeding it, and growing to a chicken. Just the same way as you would finance your weekly options. The last vertical is the B2B enterprise vertical, Elios Labs. So what we do is we help Web2 companies bridge into Web3. For example, we're working with a couple of large F&B companies. For example, we're doing a NFT mint for a whiskey company. They want to be able to import a private cask of whiskey for their users, and the users will be able to mint an NFT to grant them access to a private cask of whiskey and club membership. We're also speaking to game studios. I think over the last 2 or 3 months, we've got in touch with Sega, Disney, Tencent Games, and they're also exploring how they can take some of the existing Web2 games and move into Web3. This is a little bit about Atlas. So really, the first product, right, Atlas.com, the purpose is how can we use something as simple and low barrier as casual games to really onboard users into Web3. And that's how we started with the angle of using casual games. This is kind of like the common denominator of all different game genres. Wanted something that's a bit more mass market, something that was a little bit more brainless. The second product was Battle Showdown. So we have 2 game modes now. The first game mode is the PvP mode. So this multiplayer. We currently have 30 over different project partners, and you have game modes like Royal Rumble, Team Battle. Recently, we also did something pretty exciting. We changed the game into a story mode and used it as an interactive storytelling experience. So what you see on the right, most of us are probably familiar with what happened with FTX, right? So what we did is we gamified the storytelling experience through letting a player be CZ. CZ is the CEO of Binance. So they interact through the game, and then they can interact with different NPCs and other different characters. Definitely do check it out. You can see the CEO of Binance evolve into this superhero, and he can shoot like orbs and defeat characters. And just for those of you who are into crypto, there's sort of like hidden nuggets from a design perspective. So definitely take a look out for that. This was kind of like a 3-4 day experiment that we did. Thankfully, we know we've got featured on a number of large publications. I think in the 3 days, we managed to hit roughly more than 1 million impressions on this publication. So I think that was a fun weekend project. This is a little bit more about how we use that whole very relevant news that was happening and turned it into a special story mode. What was interesting is that since then, Binance took notice of us, and just this afternoon we actually got on a call with Binance and kind of exploring, can we one, further the story mode for them, or two, can we build some gamification features for them to help users onboard into Web3, create their first wallet. So I think that actually was a very fruitful conversation with them, and hopefully that turns into something a little bit more exciting as to we could build a gamification feature for Binance. The fourth, like I mentioned, we take something kind of like a gamifying, like a Pokemon style game. You are a caretaker. You serve every time you service your options. Your chickens get fed, they get hatched, and you can send your chickens out for quests. So if you see on the right, kind of how we are drawing the parallel between options and also chickens is, for example, when you mint an NFT that's entering a position, you feed it, you service the option, you harvest it when you take profit, when you farm, it's kind of like profit share. So very visual, and in fact, a lot of the very deep in DeFi folks liked it because it's a bit of like a tongue-in-cheek as to something that's so complex. But it also served the newer markets where people who are less familiar with options, and this was kind of their first experience with options. The last, like I mentioned, we work with MNCs and large brands to kind of help them make that transition into Web3. So either game studios going to Web3, beverage companies minting NFTs, game development for even existing Web3 projects, or large consumer apps that want to launch gamification features. The way to think about it is we started as a 2C platform, so we acquired users ourselves. Since then, we moved more to like a B2B2B, B2B2C option. What we did is we realized that a lot of the things that we've built could be modularized and kind of like Lego blocks, taking them out, and we use those pieces to service different clients. And maybe I can change the topic a little bit more to this whole concept of like GameFi instead of GameFi. For those who are not sure, GameFi kind of means like gamified finance. And really, it started with this whole craze of play to earn, where if you could earn money while playing games, that's probably a dream job for many people. And it kind of evolved into this concept of play and earn. And some of us joke that it's just play in the future. That's because in GameFi 1.0, a lot of it is just very emissions heavy. The ecosystems were very closed off. Now we're slowly moving into this phase of GameFi 2.0, where it's a lot more like platform focus and it includes the external ecosystem. I think this is, looking back, would I say that things should have taken another turn? I don't think so. This is just like when Uber, Grab, Airbnb first came into the market, they gave coupons, they gave vouchers, right? So a lot of it was education. Just like, on e-commerce, why they give a lot of like promos. This really just user education. And I think GameFi 1.0 was inevitable. Now naturally moving into a more sustainable manner. Even in a bear market right now, we still see roughly 55% of on-chain activity related to gaming. So I think that's just a very true testament that gaming is something that is recession-proof, and the need and demand for it still persists even in a crypto bear market, or what I say, a traditional larger macro bear market. This could be interesting. There are multiple sectors even within GameFi, and to kind of group it in a very simple format, the first one is single title. So you have your AAA games, you have your trading card games, casual games, you have a bit of like DeFi related games. Then you have those that are a little bit more multi-title. So these are your aggregators, your metaverses, where they basically pool intellectual property together. Of course, you have, going down the layer, your infrastructure. So these are like tools, companies like Forte, Mod.io, and of course, not to forget your protocols, right? Which is really what the records are being recorded on chain. A couple of promising ones are like Wax, Immutable X as well, and guilds. These are like Yu-Gi-Oh games, Breeder DAO. They play the role of really educating the market. So if I had to think about it from a example with real life Web2 company, single title games are like separate taxi companies, Gojek, Grab, Comfort. Multi-title are kind of like your aggregators. We don't have that in Singapore, but some other countries like China, there are aggregator taxi apps. Infrastructure, these are the companies that does like payments. So like Stripe, these are the companies that does security, 2FA or like GCP cloud services. Number of skills. Skills are like your driver centers. These are the places that drivers go there to be onboarded, learn how to use the Grab app. So really a very similar lens as to how we look at Web2 companies. Same thing that is being broken up in Web3 GameFi industry. There's a couple of interesting use cases for NFTs. I think this NFTs are non-fungible tokens. For those of you who are not familiar, we hear a lot about this in the papers, right? And there's a few ways that we've seen it right now. One, of course, the most obvious is through in-game assets. ERC-721 is just, think about it as a certain standard. And what it just means is that every piece here is unique. So this particular character, there's only one of one. This particular character, there's only one of one. You can have multiple of the same ones, but maybe the serial number will be different. So it is still somewhat unique. And then you have another standard called 1155. These are your collectibles. So it's not fully unique, but you can just have many copies of the same versions. These are mainly for like collectibles, for example. You also have them using NFTs as a gated way for utility. One example is Pass the Rainbow. This is a game built by this Doodles community. And only if you own the NFT, you can access the game. And through that, you get special access to like the sounds or like certain features and characters. Interesting note, App Store actually banned the ability to use NFTs to gate certain utilities. I think that is also something that's against their revenue model, right? Because they want users to be able to charge through a credit card to gain different access. If not, they won't be able to take a transaction fee. If you put it through NFT, you kind of like cut Apple away. So this is kind of the different sentiments as to how large players are reacting to the scene. Lastly, you also start seeing a lot of different companies using NFTs or what they call Sobong tokens as a universal passport for us to track progress across different games, right? Staking is one use case, or how they can use a Sobong token to kind of act as a way to cross promote users to different games, and this is really to reduce user acquisition. So more interestingly, what can we expect in the near future? I think one thing to take note is investments into GameFi started almost 1 or 2 years ago. In fact, in 2021, it accounted for 17% of total investments. What it means is that normally in game dev cycle, it takes a 2 to 3 year timeline for it to hit the market. So we're definitely going to be seeing a lot of new game drops happening next year. Some of it either Web2 games turning Web3 or games that were built on the get-go as a Web3 game. You also see a lot of large MNCs dipping their toes, from gaming companies, Web2 companies, very nostalgia companies like Neopets, Habbo Hotel even, or Web3 NFT companies moving into the space. Doodles is one. Yuga Labs, this is the company that's involved with Board It Yacht Club. Why is the gaming market so talked about? If you put things to perspective, in 2021 alone, the total revenue in this sector accounts to just under 200 billion. And if you put that to perspective, that's actually larger than Hollywood and the whole of the music industry combined. So that's why there's so much attention is being paid there. Lastly, where do we see Atlas fitting into this whole industry? One, we see ourselves as an onboarding storytelling tool. We also see ourselves as a way to plug that B2B2C gap and tap on existing brands to kind of reach out to consumers. And going back to our mission, right? We really want to use games to kind of onboard the mass market into Web3, and it's really difficult to do it on ourselves. So that's why we are a lot more partnership prone. Yeah, so maybe less so relevant for you guys since all of you are probably graduates or early graduates, but we work a lot with game studios, esports teams, MNCs, aggregators, or NFT platforms. And yeah, we're always open to collab. For those who are undergrads or fresh grads, we're always open to meeting good talent. If you want to look for an internship or perhaps explore a full-time role, happy to chat with you guys, or if this is not a good fit, happy to refer you guys, or just give some of my own personal opinion if you are looking to make a move into either a Web2 or a Web3 gaming scene. If not, that is really all on my side. Thanks for your attention, and let me know if there's any question or any point of the slide that piqued your interest.
Yeah, thank you so much, Elston. So if anyone has any questions, you all can. Yes, we have a question in the chat. Do you see Web3 games becoming the majority share of games in the future? And if so, how long would you think this will take?
Okay. Yeah, that's an interesting question. I think for one, we start off with the definition of what's Web3, right? Right now, Web3 is kind of like a blanket term. Does it mean that you have tokens? Does it mean that you're on chain? Does it mean that you're using certain IP that's involved in Web3? So it really, really depends. But here's what I would say. It really doesn't matter. Because if you think about it, right now, when you play Dota, when you play PUBG, like no one asks, like, is it running on GCP? Is it running on AWS, right? Is it running on Azure? It really doesn't matter. So in the long run, whether it's on Polygon, whether it's on ETH, whether it's on WEX, it really doesn't matter. But I think that if you want to use a blanket term of Web3, a lot of them will move towards that sector, and I'll tell you why. One of it from a game studio point of view, right? The distribution of game studios is normally very, very long tail. One or two big ones will kind of dominate the space. You have Tencent Games, Supercell, and it's like just a really long tail. What Web3 does is kind of like what Kickstarter does for Web2 products. It's a way for early supporters to have financial upside. It's a way for them to be in direct contact with the community, with the founders. And if anything, it's just a really strong way for a project to build retention. So for that long tail of game studios, that's something that's definitely clear to them. It's another way for them to get fundraised, right? They don't have to go to a VC, and building a game is pretty costly. So one way is, just like how Kickstarter would be able to sell early products to the community, building a Web3 game is another way, to raise money through tokens to build the game. If it's something that's a little bit more like community-based, let's say if it's Minecraft, let's say it's Roblox, being able to put it on blockchain just allows better incentive structure. You don't have to worry that there's multiple like second, third, fourth parties taking a transaction fee. There's a clear relationship between the gamer and also the publisher. But there's a strong demand from them, from the game studios, for the users as well. But I think what will be a few key hurdles is one, regulation, and also the existing incumbents. For example, we've already seen Apple saying, hey, we don't allow NFT gated features. And that's because if you do that, they can't get their hands in any of the transactions. So, and they are the main distributor of mobile apps. So they have already made it clear. Even some of the existing Web2 game studios have already made it clear. Like GTA also made it very clear that they didn't want to have anything related to NFTs. But you have also other games on the other hand, really, really embracing it. So I can't say whether it'll be the dominant one, but I think it's definitely going to be a lot more than what we see right now.
Yeah, I hope that answers your question. Yeah, thank you so much. I guess another question we would like to ask is, do you think while making games, because we have this distinction between the business side of things and the game side of things, how do you think Web3 can really bring about or how do you overcome the barrier of a game becoming less like a game and more like a way to earn money? And does it affect how the game is played at all?
Yeah, I think that's a really good question. Kind of what I mentioned earlier, right? It started with this concept of play to earn. And in the early days, one of the most popular games is called Axie Infinity. And one of their marketing campaign is just, hey, you can earn $1,000 a month on our game. So people used to like quit their job just to play. And if you think about it, it was really, really lucrative. But if you go back to first principles, how is it possible that anybody can like play games irregardless of the results, irregardless of their commercial value, and just pocket $1,000, right? So it was kind of writings on the wall that it was never sustainable. But similar to what I mentioned earlier, I don't think that it would have been any other way, just like how Uber or like Shopee had to use promo codes to educate the market. With that being said, I think there could be two ways. One, majority of Web3 gaming still will be centered across the main use case of it being fun, entertaining. That is really, I would say, what's the purpose of games are. But I think we'll see a small subset of people, of users, using the Web3 element to profit. And I don't think that it's a bad thing or anything new. What I mean by that is, right now people would, train different accounts. I remember in my days, people would train Maple accounts to level 80 and then sell off the whole account, right? That already happens informally. What blockchain does is just makes everything a lot easier. There'll be like marketplaces, you don't have to go the underhand table of contacting someone on like MSN in my days. You don't have to give them your whole email address. All of the assets can be tokenized and all the progress can move across in the NFT, and it just makes it a lot easier to trade. So I think one of the main use case of Web3 gaming will still be centered across fun, but we'll definitely see other ways of people monetizing this. Just like how initially YouTube was started as a way to entertain, but people could still monetize it and create a career out of it. So I don't think it'll be any different for gaming.
Yeah. So if anyone has any more questions, you can put in the chat. So we have a question. How would you plan to start if you want to go in the Web3 space? So for example, I guess you could say, do you start from off the bat, say, I want to design a game for Web3, then all my technology should be centered around that? Or should you go and say, I want to make this game first and then I want to pivot to Web3? And which one would you recommend?
I'm guessing this is from a perspective of an undergraduate or like a game.
Like starting a junior game developer, let's say.
Okay, yeah, from a game developer. I think maybe two angles. The first one is, do you have something that is like fun and entertaining, right? Do you have a novel concept of a new game, or you found an interesting use case to employ blockchain so that it improves the current game ecosystem? So examples to both of them. One is, let's say, you've built the next Wordle, and this is just a very simple game that was easily entertaining, and the share function where you see those different blocks on WhatsApp, had some viral coefficient. Then okay, let's see how we can bring that to Web3. Or you think that bringing on blockchain and tokenization of assets could solve a real problem. For example, if you played certain games and new games, maybe they weren't like certified. If they're like gacha components and they weren't certified, right? And when you cash in and you gacha, you can at least truly verify that this was truly random. Some companies, of course, they go through independent audits, but maybe smaller game studios don't have the resources or like the time to do that, right? Then maybe blockchain changes something, right? There is true verifiability of whether certain probabilities are actually randomly generated. So I think it really depends. But I would say go with the perspective of, one, do you have a novel idea to make something more interesting or more fun? Or two, does it solve an existing problem statement? If you started with the angle that, hey, this is a easier way for me to earn money, probably not the best example, but maybe it's the easiest way to like fundraise or build a community around. I think that would be novel.
Yeah, thanks so much. So I think we have one more question. How would you envision the Web3 space in the future, especially for games?
Yeah, I think that's a good question. Touched on a little bit about it at the end of my sharing. So I think next year and the following year, you would start seeing a lot of game launches hitting the public markets. There have been a number of large AAA Web3 games like Star Atlas, Illuvium. They fundraised, but they took some time for deployment. So I think you'll see that happen. Spoke to a number of Web3 VCs and also game publishers. A lot of their big launches are going to be hitting the markets next year. So I think that will be pretty defining as to how people would react with some features being NFTs or having some element of like tokens. And even if having tokens, it's nothing new, right? Roblox has Robux. So different games have different gaming credits. This is just a bit more tokenized, a bit more transparent. And yeah, I think it'll be interesting. I think what is more interesting is not really what gamers or game publishers do, because what they do is really building fun games. What would be interesting is seeing how incumbents and how regulation would react to it. So yeah, I think at Atlas, we're pretty bullish that next year and the year after will be pretty exciting times because a lot of big launches are happening. And like I mentioned earlier, right, even in the buy market, 55% of on-chain transactions are still related to gaming. So even when, overall investor or like market sentiments are down at its bottom, it is still the dominant use case. So I think that's just testament to, feel free to ping me. A couple of my teammates are on the line as well. So feel free to reach out. I think we have like one more question in chat.
We have one more question. So the point you make about retention is interesting. Do you think this will shift towards forever games? For example, we are seeing a lot more and more live service games like Genshin Impact or Overwatch versus buy once box games, sort of like the stuff you see on Steam Market.
Yeah, that's a great question. And I think if it's tokenized, it's there on the blockchain. You can never like pull it away, right? And if you think about, certain games that you played 10, 15 years ago, all that, money or time that you spend in, if there's a way for you to extract it and move it through different games, or, there's much more liquidity to sell it in the marketplace, that would be interesting. I know I'm still sitting on like tons of like Pokemon cards, Yu-Gi-Oh cards, WWE cards that I don't know if people are still interested to buy it, but that's like the offline world, right? If there's an online version of it, some of this could have nostalgic value, right? And if it was much easier to move your assets across games or to transact, I think that will be a game changer. One thing on this point, right, is that even if a game stops like making updates or any more like patch releases, at least your assets are still there for you to access, for you to move around. Even if it just means keeping it in your own like Web3 wallet, it is still something of value compared to if a certain game shuts down, their servers are closed and they pull it off the App Store. You might never ever see it again. So I think it does bring a little bit of a difference to gamers. And like I mentioned earlier, for some game studios who are using this as a fundraising mechanism, I think this could also give a little bit more confidence and faith in the users that it is not something that my publishers can just quote unquote run away with. There is something that I can still extract value from. But yeah, that's a super good question.
Yeah, thank you. Just out of interest, how did you manage to get what drove you into the Web3 space in the first place?
Yeah, so I think it started around 2017 where I first heard about people selling pictures of cats for $1,000 on the internet. I'm not sure how many of us have heard of that. So this is kind of a very OG NFT project called CryptoKitties. So what it is you can Google it. It's pictures of cats that are NFTs and selling for like $1,000. And what was interesting is they allow you to like breed the NFTs, right? So if I have a red cat and a blue cat, I breed it together, it could form some certain combination of traits. And I just thought that was interesting, right? And I never paid much attention to it. Just like, oh, this is cool. What is NFTs? What does fungible mean? What's a token? And maybe across the years, as I slowly graduated, a lot of my peers went to join like random companies that's called like Coinbase and Binance. At that time, I was like what are these companies, right? And yeah, I just always kept tabs on them. Even when my friends move over to those companies, they've always like say, hey, there's a role here. Do you want to move over? So I always had some interest and and then for me, I was always in startup scene, so I was always interested to find out like what's the new tech available and what's like the new trend of the season. And yeah, I think it really came to fruition maybe in like 1.5 years ago, where me and a couple of ex teammates from Grab really got together, say, hey, there's this thing. Do we want to kind of like build a startup together? Also, because one of our co-founders, he did a PhD in cryptography and security. This is like in early 1990s. So we felt that he had a very relevant experience, and we chatted with him, and he kind of like really like gave me a rundown of like how should I think about cryptocurrency and how should I think about assets being tokenized on chain, right? Because it is a very novel concept. Just like when in early 2008 when the iPhone first came out, or early days of internet. So yeah, I think I'm drawn to new technology, and for myself, I'm fairly early in my career. I didn't want to just stay in Web2 because there are people who had like 15, 20 years of experience, and personally from a career perspective, it's just like something that I can't rush time, right? I can't just like add 15 more years to my resume. And I wanted to be able to take that risk and move into a new industry. And from a first principles point of view, a lot of the stats and the industry trends that we're seeing Web3 like just made sense to me. So yeah, just jumped in it, and fortunately enough, just like met good co-founders, met a good team, managed to raise a good round. So sometimes, from a career or personal perspective, you can't predict or time any of this, and sometimes like the dots join together when you look backwards. And yeah, it's just been a really fun experience in this industry, and coming to office every day with people who share the same passion.
That's always nice to hear. Do we have any more questions? Oh, given your outlook on the space, do you see Web3 games leading towards a single connected ecosystem? Basically the conceptual idea of the metaverse, or towards several segregated gaming bubbles centered around each game, where the developers are unable to spot each other's tokenized assets and compete to retain players instead.
Yeah, that's a good point as well. I think if you try and pattern match from Web 1 or Web 2, most paths normally reach a path of aggregation. So even like, let's say we look at ride hailing, right? In China, there used to be like 20 players. Now it's down to like 22 players, and some platforms are aggregator. Even in the early days of Steam, you see, how they started the initial marketplace, and it just became a driver of force, right? More users, more games, more users. That will happen. But I think it probably wouldn't be kind of like a winner takes all ecosystem. There will probably be still a few major players. I think that's just good for consumers and for the industry, besides from having a pure monopoly. And of course, the gaming market is so big, the blockchain market is so big. It's hard for any one client to service everything. Even on a protocol level, you're already seeing like some L1 protocols, L2 protocols. Even within L2 protocols, they have like different ways of catering to different use cases. So I don't think there'll be like a Google for everything. But you definitely see a couple of like predominant players. It is still a very nascent early market. To put things to perspective, if you look at Google search, right, the term GameFi kind of like peaked in March last year, March to June last year. So if you think about the nascency of the industry, it's really not even like 1.5, 2 years old. So it's really, really early. If you liken this to the internet days, this is probably like year 2000, 2001. I wish I could predict the future, but I can't. But what I think will happen is definitely, if you pattern match based on history, it normally aggregates to like major 4 or 5 players. Only because from a business perspective, there's always like economics of scale. But yeah, I don't think that it'll just be one single player.
Yeah, I hope that answers your question. Yep. Actually, we have a question on Discord. Someone wants to ask, given live service games like Genshin, which has their own economics and gacha system, when you allow such games to cross assets with other games, how doesn't it possibly adversely affect the economics and gameplay, and how will you mitigate it?
Yeah, that's a great question, right? If you think about it in real life, before e-commerce came, right, every different like mama shop would sell the same bottle of drinks for different prices. Every mama shop would sell the same cup noodle for different prices. Once Google came, it allowed you to compare prices. Once Shopee came, it allowed you to, or like I'll use the concept of eBay, because eBay is anybody could list their products, right? And what happens is the market just trends towards a competitive pricing, and it kind of reaches some sort of like industry standard, right? So in that perspective, I think that you definitely have a lot of like teething issues about compatibility, whether it keeps certain games imbalanced, and I think it's just natural. In the long run, we would see some sort of like equalization, and maybe companies or game studios will have less control of how they want to be able to push certain game economics, and maybe it's a little bit more player dependent, a little bit like how in econs there's like monetary policy, right, to kind of like set certain boundaries and let the market forces takes its own course. Maybe from a technical perspective, I think the compatibility of, let's say, design would probably be one thing. If certain games are like isometric, pixelized, 3D and all that, you would definitely start seeing standards being set as to how different designs of the assets can actually be interoperable. in terms of ecosystem, or like, if you ask about the economics of it, what this actually enables is a reset button. Right now, if certain games, they all have their own tokens or their own credit system, it's true. Once you open up the ecosystem, it messes up with the economics, right? But what if everybody started with just one credit system, one transparent credit system? Maybe it's Ethereum, maybe it's Polygon. That way, it might allow a little bit more ease of interoperability. But I don't think the resistance to it should just be because we can't solve the problem, because that's kind of how e-commerce solves for price differentiation in real life mom and pop shops. So yeah, don't have all the answers, but I think that interoperability of assets will be one that is easier to take force. That's something that we're already doing on all our products for Battle Showdown, right? So we managed to bring in 30, 40 different projects, NFT projects or Web2 brands, to all share the same design style in one game. That's probably the first step. And in the long run, if we can actually truly create a single currency or credit system across games, I mean, you already have like Steam doing that. You already have like Apple App Store, like Play Store doing that. So I think it's possible, just that it might take some time for the market to react to it. But yeah, another solid question, man. Is it also from Troy? Or like?
No, it's actually someone else from Discord. Yeah.
Okay.
Actually,
Yeah, that's a very good question.
we have a same question on another question on Discord. What's the trend of gamers playing multiple games, and on top of that, for the partial purpose of monetary gains? And are there ways to simplify these integrations to perhaps treat this as one big game, rivaling the experience of just playing a single game versus multiple games?
The whole play to earn phase, people are just like moving to whichever games like paid the most money, right? Is it just like simple casual games, multiplayer games, or like pure DeFi games? Humans naturally flock towards where incentives are the greatest. So yes, people do play multiple games. I mean, even now, if you take away the incentive structure, I think we already watched multiple games. We watch multiple movies, watch multiple dramas. I think that's a given. The second question, help me refresh my memory a little bit.
Yeah, so the second question is, are there ways to simplify these integrations and perhaps treat this as one big game instead of multiple games?
Yeah, interesting. Actually, that was one of our initial product, Atlas.com. So we put together 20, 30 different casual games, and it's all layered upon one currency, one meta mechanics, one marketplace. And maybe you could think of it as what Steam did for all its different title games, right? You will probably see a congregation of economics, just like how there's like Play Center or App Store. It kind of aggregates towards like one certain economics system. So I think yes, that is definitely possible. That is on the token side. So there could also be possibilities where the NFTs, the assets itself, become the currency of trade. So if you take Axie Infinity, for example, not like the model answer, but it was one of the more prominent games. The assets themselves were traded for money, right? You could sell your Axies, and depending on the trade, depending on how many times it was bred, that could also wallet address tied to only Kenneth, tied to only Elston, right? And that could mean that now you could hand over like states or different game progress. That could be something that's interesting as well.
Yeah. Thanks for that. If a player can accrue a certain amount of wealth, botting can obtain many times as much. How will you prevent this from washing out single lone players, especially when connected to a large metaverse ecosystem where botting or companies joining as players have much greater incentives to do so? So I guess it's a question on how you address the issue of like people botting during games.
Yeah, whether Web2 or Web3 botting is something that's very, very common. In fact, a personal experience in the early days, we ran a giveaway campaign on Twitter, and basically, you complete a few tasks, fill up your entry in Google Form, and I think we released the campaign, and 2 hours later, I opened up to just check the results, it's the first time that I seen Google form results like jump, like it jumped from 1,000, 2,000, 3,000. I see that in real time, right? That's like, okay, definitely, it's someone's like, we're being botted. I think that's very common, even in like Web2, even in my past life at Grab, right? Botting drivers or botting numbers or like spoofing locations, these are all very common things. Thankfully, a lot of the founding team all has a security background, both our CEO and also head of blockchain. So that's just their own personal experience. But naturally, soon you'll see like solutions coming up, right? Just like how there was like spam filters for emails, how was like CAPTCHA for accessing secured sites. You already start seeing a lot of this mechanisms to kind of solve this. That's why we also build our own fraud management platforms. And this is just an easy way for us to decipher what's a real user, what's a fake user. And, anytime you have any cash in or cash out mechanics, you can run through your fraud detection platform once before anything is actually, funneled to the user or taken out of the ecosystem. So yeah, I think these are teething issues that that any teething industry faced. And we have already seen examples of how they solved it in Web 1, Web 2. So I don't think it'd be any different. But yeah, naturally, definitely, yes, right now you see a lot of this thing happening.
Yep, I hope that answers your question. Yeah, if I'm just gonna give like a few more minutes in case any questions stream in. I guess if you were to give some advice to anyone who wants to enter the Web3 space, like maybe in the next few years, what would it be?
Maybe just for my context, is everyone mainly game devs, game designers?
Yeah, we have a variety of people, mostly we have a variety of people. Basically, you can either be art side, game side, or programming side, game design or programming side. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I would say this is similar, like moving into any industry. One, actually find out a little bit more about it yourselves. Either speak to people, read about it online, or one good way is read about projects white paper. You can hear about like what are the different innovations that they're doing or how they are employing Web3 into their games. Same thing, reach out to people in the industry, connect with seniors, apply through like formal or informal job routes. But maybe what might be interesting is first understand like the basis of blockchain. I think at least you understand like from a first principles point of view, like what really is the difference that blockchain brings to gaming, and a couple of people and resources that you can use. One is, I'm pretty sure most of us knows who's like Vitalik Buterin, is the co-founder of Ethereum. He's definitely someone to like look at his interviews or read about the initial Bitcoin white paper, look at Vitalik's speeches. There's a couple of books as well online. I'm pretty sure you can find like courses on it already. It tells you a little bit about what does blockchain really entail, how do they employ different and maybe just for some context, like blockchain isn't anything new, right? It's already been available for years, and it's the aggregation of different past technologies. Yes, the works of like how spam filters were made. Yes, the works of how people in World War II used to send like encrypted messages to each other. So it's nothing new. It's just really the aggregation of different past technologies. So definitely first understand it, and second, yeah, just play a few games, try it out yourselves first, and just like any other industry, speak to people, go through the interview process, and find out about it.
Yeah, thank you so much for the words of wisdom. If there are no other questions, if you would like to talk more to Elston and the rest of the Atlas team, you can do so on our Discord under the Meet Our Sponsors category under the Atlas channel. And yeah, thank you everyone, and please give a round of applause to Elston, whether it's a reaction or in person. Yeah, for giving this talk. Thank you so much, Elston.
Sure. Thanks everyone for taking your evening. Yeah, feel free to reach out to us on LinkedIn, or like some of my teammates are also online. So feel free to drop any questions or reach out to us. If you're interested to find out about internship role, full-time role, or just interested to find out about industry, feel free to ping us.
Yep, thank you so much. If without further ado, today the lucky draw code for this talk is to the moon. It is Space Demon. Our website is Space Demon. I was like, oh, crypto, so why not? Yes, so you can enter this passcode on our website under the schedules tab. And thank you so much for coming. I'll just leave this on for the next around 5 minutes so that people can mark this down. And yeah, if you have any questions, feel free to contact the team on Discord. Okay, thank you everyone. Thank you, Austin.
Sounds good. I'll just drop my LinkedIn and the company's LinkedIn if anybody have any follow-up questions.
Yep, sure.
This
Yeah, thank you.
review our company.